What's up, Catalyst? Man, we're so glad that you guys are here tonight. And if this is your first time, thanks for joining us. We'd love the opportunity to meet you after groups and just talk more about what Catalyst is and how you can be more involved in it as well. Well, for the last 2 weeks, we've been in a series called Heroes, and we've been looking at different people in the Bible in which God has used to be the hero in the lives of others. Now, we believe here at Catalyst that you too, even as a student, has the qualities and makeup to be the hero in the lives of other students, other family members, and other people all across the world. And in this series, we're talking about what those qualities look like and how we can use those to advance the mission and message of Jesus. Now, I want you guys to know right off the bat that my favorite superhero is Batman. Now, if you disagree with me, just go ahead and shh, because you're always going to be wrong. Batman is the greatest superhero. He trumps everybody. There's no discussion. And one of my favorite movies of the classic Batman series is The Dark Knight. Now, in the second part of this trilogy, Bruce Wayne, who is Batman, is faced with a dilemma. Either he can save Harvey Dent, who's the district attorney of Gotham City and can put a major dent, no pun intended, into the crime spree of the city, or he can save Rachel, his childhood friend and love interest. Well, if you've seen the movie, then you know how it ends, right? He arrives to the warehouse, and there on the floor is Harvey Dent, and he saves him. And Harvey Dent goes on to live, but Rachel does not. And it's literally one of the worst moments of the movie, actually, of all of the Batman series. Now, you might think, well, Michael, that's a weird thing to think. But no, I wanted Batman to get what he wanted. I wanted Batman to ride off in the sunset with Rachel, happy. And if Harvey Dent happened to live, then okay, that's like icing on the cake. But no, Batman doesn't get Rachel. Now, you might be sitting there and you might be thinking, man, Michael, that's quite selfish. Why would you think that? Don't you believe that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? And so Batman saving Harvey benefited the city instead of Batman saving Rachel and only benefiting himself? I mean, I guess you could be right, and I guess your opinion would be an acceptable opinion, but still, it just eats at me. So let me ask you this question. Isn't it easier for us to really just kind of think about ourselves than to think about others? Isn't it easier for us to really put the needs of what we want in front of the needs of what others want? So one of the things we've discovered in this series, that as we've searched for what a hero really is like, is that in order for that hero to achieve his or her desired outcome, he or she must be willing to lose. Now, I understand this concept is one that is taken with an eye roll and a whatever. I'm not losing anything, so just go ahead and shut up, Michael. But actually, what we've seen is that this is a hard concept to understand. Even in your world as students, you're told all the time that you've got to win, right? You've got to be the best and do the best and make the best grades in order to get into the best colleges, in order to have the best class ranking, in order to have the best job, and which would hopefully lead to the best kind of life, right? That's what you're told. In other words, you have to win the win, and failure or losing isn't an option. Now, don't get me wrong. Winning is good and fun and important. I mean, you can't be a good superhero unless you have some wins from time to time. However, winning doesn't always look the same, especially in the life of someone who is following Jesus. And here's why. Because sometimes winning is losing and losing is winning. So if you have your Bible or a Bible app, I'd love for you to turn to Matthew chapter 16. We're going to look at one of the best pieces of advice that Jesus gave the disciples and how it completely changed the thought on what it means to win in life and how that can translate to you and I discovering the hero inside of us. And while you're getting there, I'm going to kind of fill in some of the gaps and kind of get us caught up to date with what has happened before we get to the text we're looking at today. So Jesus and his disciples were arriving in the town, and in the midst of their arriving, Jesus decided to ask a question. Now, if you've been reading in the scriptures lately and been doing any study in the Gospels, you know that Jesus doesn't just ask a question to ask a question. There's always some greater meaning or greater thing he wants us to discover behind the question. And he always usually knows the answer, right? Which is really kind of annoying. It's kind of like the parent that always comes home, like, and you've done something and they know you've done something and they ask you a question about it, right? They're not really looking for like the answer because they know the answer. They're really looking to see if you understood what you've done, or they're trying to catch you in a lie. Like, man, parents, why you gotta be like that? Why you gotta mess us up? But parents do that, and so does Jesus. Jesus asked the disciples a question, not looking for an answer, but looking to see if they understood the meaning and the significance of the moment that they were in. And here's what Jesus asked him. So he says, hey, what's the scuttlebutt around town? Who do people say the Son of Man is, right? Jesus wants to know the latest gossip of what's going on around town. So the disciples start throwing out all these different names like Jeremiah or Elijah. Some say Moses. Some say this, some say that, right? And then Jesus says, okay, so that's what everybody else is saying. Who do you say I am? You see what Jesus did there? He already knew the answer. He knew what people were saying. He wanted to know if the disciples truly got it, right? So Peter's like our really eager person. Peter jumps in. Peter's like, hey, Jesus, I got this. You the Messiah. You the Son of the living God. You like down like full flat tires. You and God are like this and that, like, right? And Jesus is like, hey, Peter, you pretty much got that right. Jesus begins to see that the disciples are getting really close to understanding who he is. So Jesus takes this moment to help the disciples understand, okay, now that you are gravitating towards who I am, now you have to really understand why I came here and what I'm about to do. So look with me in verse 21 at what Jesus says then. From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders and the leading priests and the teachers of the religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day, he would be raised from the dead. Now, I want you to imagine with me for a second, like maybe a really good friend or best friend or something like that, or maybe a mentor, somebody you look up to, or maybe like your favorite student pastor comes to you and is like, hey, it was so good hanging out with you. I had a lot of fun. But see, I'm gonna go die on the cross and I kind of want to. Like, you'd be like, what? Like you wouldn't even know why would you want to do that? I can imagine that you would start trying to convince that person not to do that. Like, hey, man, you don't have to die on the cross. You don't have to do this. Like, there are other ways to get people to love Jesus, like love you, love God. Like, you don't have to, don't worry about this. In fact, I am not going to let you do this, honestly. And that's where we find Peter. So Peter hears Jesus say, hey, I got to go to the cross and I'm going to give my life. But don't worry, I'm going to come back in 3 days. And Peter's like, no, this ain't happening. This is not happening, Jesus. Just so you know, I'm not going to let this happen. And I love Jesus' response to Peter. Look with me. Jesus said, get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view and not from God. Man, that's harsh. That is really harsh. You imagine like somebody walk up to you at school one day and says like, hey, you are the most despicable, horrible person in the entire world. Everybody hates you. Like, you would feel horrible. And I'm sure that's probably how Peter felt at that moment. But what Peter didn't understand was that Jesus wasn't calling him Satan. Jesus was calling out Satan's attempt to use Peter to derail Jesus's plan. You see, because the enemy will always use our weaknesses to derail the plans of God. He will always try to use what we are least good at, what we fail at all the time, where we're not strong at, to try to derail the plans of God. Yet Jesus took this moment and he turned it into one of the best teaching moments when it comes to understanding how a hero must lead his or her life. Look at verse 24. Then Jesus said to the disciples, if any one of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Now, as we read these two verses, we see that there's something happening here on both the surface level and beneath the surface level. There is this, and then there's also that. And Jesus didn't want us or his disciples to miss both, and or. He didn't want us to miss either of that. So I want to take the next few minutes to talk about what this means for our life. And I want to share, I think, three things I want you guys to see in this statement that Jesus made to disciples. And I fully believe that this will help us understand what it means to lose and how in reality you are really winning. Jesus wanted the disciples, and he wanted for you and I to see the first thing, which is losing to win isn't about me. It isn't about you. Losing to win isn't about yourself. When you win, it's all about all the things you did, all the hard work that you did to accomplish that win. When you lose, it's all about the mistakes that you've made, everything that you did wrong that got you that loss, right? But Jesus wanted us to understand that in this fight, in this battle to save the day for someone, it's not about you. It's not about me. Actually, he wanted you and I to understand that we would have to come to the end of ourselves. Let me say that again, that we would have to come to the end of ourselves before we could be used to save the life of somebody else. Now, what does that mean to come to the end of yourself? It means not going your own way. Jesus said that if you wanted to win, you would have to lose sight of going your own way and doing your own thing. Now, it could be a very easy path to take and doing it your own way, right? You decide what's right and what's wrong. You decide when to submit and when to overrule. But losing means allowing others who have more insight and experience to speak into the way you're living your life. It means trusting your parents that they have the best interests in mind, even though they may not fully understand what you're going through. It means that you recognize that you can't do this all on your own, but you plus Jesus is everything. When you understand it and begin to come to the end of yourself, winning will start looking a lot different because, number two, winning is running towards the cross, not from it. Let me say that again. Winning is running towards the cross, not from it. It can be easy to see the hardships of life and think to yourself and make a mental note like, yeah, I'm not going to find myself there, right? How many times has someone been going through something and you've expressed, empathy like, man, I'm really sorry that you're going through that. But inwardly, you're like, man, thank goodness I'm not going through that. If I asked us to raise our hands in the room, I'm sure every single one of us tonight in the room would say, yeah, Michael, I've done that. I've been thankful that I wasn't going through a hard situation. And that can be very easy for us. What's interesting about this, though, is that look at what Jesus used. He says to pick up your cross. I find it interesting that Jesus uses the image of the cross because the cross was in Jesus's immediate future. In a matter of days, Jesus was going to go to the cross. He was going to be nailed to the cross. He was going to be bleeding and suffocating and experience an excruciating and endure a horrific death for the sake of you and I. And when the odds were stacked up against his favor, when the odds and the hardship were coming in strong, he didn't choose to go his own way. He didn't run from the hardships. He didn't run from the cross. He actually ran towards the cross, towards the hardship, and towards the difficult times. And you and I should do the same thing. In fact, it's not only something we should do, it's essential for us to become the kind of hero God desires us to be for someone. We can't be afraid to run towards those hurting. We can't be afraid to run towards those in need. We can't be afraid to run towards those who need to experience Jesus. And we can't be afraid to run towards the hardships that will come with being a hero, because for the sake of saving a life, we must be willing to lose our life. For the sake of saving a life, we must be willing to lose ours. While Jesus was talking about the physical life, he was also talking about the metaphorical life known as the desired life. So Jesus is speaking both to the actual loss of physical life, the potential of that, and the reality of loss of the things we desired. I know for a lot of you, you heard that statement and you automatically started tuning me out. You're like, nope, I'm not losing my life, not sacrificing my life for nobody, not putting my life in danger for anything. I'm not giving up my comforts, all my money, all my cars, all my friends, my popularity, my scholarships, my grade, nothing. I'm not doing that for anybody, right? And we all have felt that way. We've all thought about that. You begin to think about everything that's good and comfortable to you, and you don't want to risk any of that. So why would you want to give that up? Because being a hero means the needs of the many will always outweigh the needs of the few. Jesus completely understood this idea and knew that the only way to be a hero, that the only way for him to be a hero that you and I needed, he would have to lose his physical life in order to save all of humanity. Jesus understood that it wasn't about him as far as what he wanted, but it was more so about the desires to save the people. This was about what his death would trigger and what it would do for everyone, including you and I. It changed the eternal outlook for the entire world for anyone who would follow Jesus. Jesus not only laid down his physical life, but also the desired life. Jesus could have decided not to run to the cross because of the pain and the hardship that he knew that he would have to endure. Jesus could have gone his own way, but he doesn't. And when we're willing to lose our life and come to the end of ourselves, we think of ourselves last and others first. We put the good desire of those in need of our own desires. We put the desires of others above our own needs. Sometimes that means we go out of our way to befriend someone who's lonely. Sometimes that means we give up a Friday to go serve somewhere in our community. Sometimes that means we don't participate in the gossip of someone different. Sometimes that means we give up playing time for the sake of the team. Sometimes that means we help someone in need. Sometimes that means we go above and beyond for someone who we don't like. And sometimes that means we're willing to go the extra mile for someone who doesn't like us. And honestly, for some of us, sometimes that means we have to give up our physical life in order for a life to be saved. As I close, I want to talk to you about two people who, for the sake of the many, gave their lives so that people here in this country and other people around the world would know how much they are loved and desired by God, that they would be able to live in a world in which they were accepted not based on the color of their skin, but because they were a creation of the Creator. The first person I want to talk to you about is Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King led a fight in our country for equal civil rights, not just for Black people, but for all people, no matter the color of their skin or the history of your ethnic background. And one of the most memorable speeches that's ever been given, Dr. King, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., in front of 250,000 plus people, told the world about a dream that someday people of all nationalities and all race and all color will be able to join hand in hand to sing the praises of God. Dr. King believed so much in this calling that he was willing to lose his life in order to advance the call of freedom. The second person I want to tell you about is missionary Jim Elliot. Jim believed that the good news of Jesus not only needed to be told to the easy-to-reach people in your backyards and your communities and your schools and your friends and family, but also people who were hard to get to. People like the indigenous tribes in Ecuador who lived in the jungle and rainforest. Jim led a group of people who traveled to the jungles of Ecuador to bring the news of Jesus to a people group known as the Hurinis. Just as they had arrived, the natives decided to take Jim and that group of people's lives. I tell you about these two men because this is the ultimate losing to win. Those two men were willing to lose their lives in order to save millions. These men put the needs of the many above the needs of the few. These men were willing to come to the end of themselves in order for the good news of Jesus, the love of Jesus, and the grace of Jesus to be extended to all people. It wasn't just about the physical loss of life. It was also about the inner desire to lose so that they could win. So as we close, I want to leave you with these final questions. I want you to think about this throughout the week. What are you willing to lose for the sake of winning?